you. Thank you everybody for coming. Just a word, I'm very nervous. I'm sure that's kind of relatable, but I love sharing this information and helping people. That's one of the reasons why I'm really uh, grateful and excited about what Evie's doing with Vertex Form 3D, because it's enabling ordinary 3D artists like me to add my content into VR apps. So I proposed this talk on optimizing XR content because this is kind of my niche where I've been working for the past decade or so. I got my start in XR when after I graduated in my late 30s with a game art and design degree and started looking for work. The first job opportunity I came upon that was local was with a startup company, Timefire VR, and we were creating a massively multiplayer social VR experience for the Vive. No, yeah, I think it was the Vive first, and that's a headset that requires being hardwired directly to a very powerful PC, and then later we ported it to Oculus. We were developing the VR application called Hypatia, and it's actually available still on Steam. It's free to play. Wonderful game, but really ahead of its time because it was a social experience and there was so little adoption, and I think the investors pushed us to price it too high early, and so the whole experience of being in a social VR multiplayer experience like what we can do now in Vertex Form 3D was like lost on people who would go into this beautiful world with all of these collaborative activities. Like we had a theater where you can put on a stage play, but that requires like an audience and then a group of people to go on stage and do the stage play. We had a whole prop room. You would get put in the prop room and you get to like grab props and then go you get launched onto the stage, and then you do a little skit, and then people in the audience had little clappers. It was awesome. Anyway, that's where I got my start in XR, and that's where I really started to develop these niche skills of optimizing for VR, because I'll step back to my notes. In this context, optimization means taking steps to ensure that your XR application or content runs well enough to be accessible to your audience. That may seem obvious if you're here because you know what the subject matter is, but it's not always obvious to people just getting started. So the core concept is that it doesn't matter how beautiful your content is if no one ever gets to see it. And as much as it sucks, XR devices, especially those like the MetaQuest, that are not hardwired to a big powerful computer, have just there's just absolute limitations that you can't, they have a memory limit, they have a file size limit, they have a bandwidth limit for internet connectivity. So we have to work within those limitations. And lastly, the absolute worst consequence of publishing unoptimized XR content is that it can literally make real life human beings physically ill. So you don't want that. So my approach is to focus on performance first. And The main thing I advise is to start out with a focus on what matters most to you. And to some people, it's fast action. To some people, it's one beautiful, stunning piece of art. To some people, it's giving players the idea of an expansive world. And all of those things are possible. But and it is fine to prioritize just like visually stunning and very computationally complex art. The main goal, though, you just need to budget for it. And that is going to require that you skimp in every other place where the content doesn't serve that goal. So if you want a beautiful waterfall to be the feature of your space, you don't want to have a cool mirror functionality around the corner that nobody can see, or a mountain that is like out of the view and has 3 million polygons on the backside. So so my budget for max impact, that means like really keep this goal, what matters most to you about your particular scene that you're building, or your scenes, if you're building a hub with multiple scenes. Decide what matters most to you about what you're building, and then get rid of everything that undermines that goal. And I also added a note to consider the cumulative impact, because every little thing starts to build up. And so be really precise about what you're adding. And then my last advice is to ask an LLM for tailored, optimal, and performance settings. And I'm without delving into a very valid controversy over unethical uses of AI, stealing other people's work, which I absolutely oppose. Large language models like GPT and Claude can do a much better job of giving you instructions and informing you about the well-established best practices for optimization that are relevant directly to your needs. You can give it what platform you're building on, what version number you're building on, what file formats, everything, and have it give you optimization targets. So use those words, optimal and performant and settings. And yeah, I highly encourage you skip the scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of pages of forums, and Stack Overflow, and just ask. Okay, so here is my list of common culprits. And Evie, if you could help me remember, I want to save out a PDF of the slides or provide a link or both, so that people can use this as a reference later if they want. This list is not exhaustive. These are just what I have found as a 3D artist working in XR over the past 10 years. And at the top of every build report, and I'll talk about what build reports are in a second, at the top of every build report is texture files. And I found that very surprising. Like, I was always convinced and exhorted by other 3D artists in my field that 3D models and high poly counts were the biggest culprit. And so I was really hyper focused on that for the first few years. And then I started building my own applications in Unity. And part of that process is you get everything set up the way you want it. And then you go into, might as well go ahead and start my Unity demo here. You're seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So after you've set up an entire project, this is a blank Vertex Form 3D project, clean one that I downloaded from their GitHub, and then I copied into my Unity folder and I renamed it. Well, no, I didn't rename this one because I was using I was using this as an example, but anyway, that's my workflow is I will rename the folder, then open it up in the Unity Hub. So under File and then Build Profiles, you will, oops, I'm in the wrong platform. It should be in Android, and it probably will be by default if you haven't been doing development in other platforms with your system. But so this is the build window after you go through player settings and set up your company name and your project name and other publishing settings, key store, things like that, which Evie's website walks you, her tutorials walk you through every step of this. You'll eventually come back to this build window and click this button here, build. For VR, I mean, okay, I use build rather than build and run. When I'm building to a platform, that's easy to run the executable, but for me, I build it and then I open it in something like the Developer Hub or AirLink. So once you have built your project, that means that Unity, the game engine, goes through and collects everything that is needed to run your executable, the actual application itself, which in this case for Vertex Form 3D is a .apk. And it bundles that all up with it compiles all the code, it gets everything ready and spits out the APK file that you need that you can then give to other people, and then they can play your game. And you can distribute on Meta's Quest Store. And once you've done that, you will, in the console, under this little three dots in the upper right hand corner, there will be a build log available, and you can click on it. And I was actually hoping to have one ready to show you all, but I restarted my computer after installing a graphics card, and I didn't have time this morning. Making a build is kind of performance intensive on your computer, so you sometimes can't do other things, and it definitely doesn't like playing Zoom calls and the engine and all the other things that I'm doing right now. So but at the top, it's what it is a text file. I have this is an editor log, but it's not a proper build report. I had opened it up in my notepad. It will, when you open the log, it will open into a text editor like Notepad or whatever you've got assigned, and it's just a lot of gobbledygook. And what you'll look for is build report. This doesn't have it because I haven't like, it gets refreshed, that file gets refreshed. So if you want to save it, you have to save it somewhere locally, name it, and then you'll have it. I had just pasted it in or opened it up in the notes app, and I thought it would get saved, but it doesn't. So that's why I'm a tiny bit unprepared, but never fear. I asked Claude to summarize what you'll find when you search in that giant text file for build report, and it gives you the uncompressed usage of each thing that's in your built APK, and this is by category. The file size will be right next to it, and you can scroll through this list and see every single file that's in there. And so they'll have the file name and its size in megabytes and so forth. So let me get back to the common culprits. This is not exhaustive. These are just what I find at the top of every build report is texture files. Said that already, sorry. The next biggest culprit isn't something that you'll find in the build report, but multiple materials on a single model really surprisingly have a negative impact on an app's performance. And the reason for that is that the renderer has to draw, so your computer is rendering stuff to the screen, or your device is rendering stuff to your eyes. The renderer has to draw every object once for every single material. And so let's say you have a high poly object, the thing that most people think about when you're talking about 3D optimizing 3D objects. And if it has 3 materials, you're multiplying all of those polygons 3 times, for 1 time for each material, effectively. So that's huge. I think this list might be helpful for people to keep. I worked on it over a number of weeks to make sure I was trying to capture all of the most common culprits. Layered transparency is like if you have let's say a bush model, and it has an opaque parts and transparent parts, and then you have another, I mean, for every like branch, a lot of trees and bushes are like a single texture map with like the wood part and leaf parts, and then they're like cards that are like layered on top of each other. And at one point I thought that was like the most optimal thing, but turns out that layering those transparent parts causes something called overdraw. And that's another, like, the renderer has to render not just the first thing and the second thing, but how the two like blend. So it does this like multiple pass thing. And so actually a thing that really surprised me is that if you have foliage, that's a really common cause of the or use case. It is often better to actually have a higher poly model that has no opacity at all, where every leaf is its own little, 5 or 10 poly. I wouldn't do 10 poly, but anyway, a higher number of polys than you would think would be optimal. Even, an entire tree with polygon meshes can be more optimal than layered transparency, using transparency and opacity. So an obvious one, fancy shaders. If you, or it may seem obvious, shaders are the math that tell materials how to display the textures on a 3D object. And there are so many beautiful and wonderful things that you can do with shaders, including, literally distorting the shape of a mesh. And so they're often used for things like water, really cool, beautiful, realistic looking water, and particle effects, and mine is blanking about other uses for fancy shaders, but you'll know it when you have to go outside of Unity's default list, and Unity provides a lot of different shaders. Maybe it will help to show a shader. Let me go to my scene, and we'll just look at this magic beaver rainbow object in the scene. So in yours,
to say something, I love that
yeah,
one. I went into her app, that app already live, right?
It is, but I think I broke it recently.
You did?
I
I
may
went,
have.
you published it and I went to look around the beach.
Yeah, I hope it's working, but if you can personally, you can DM me your complaints if it's not working at the moment. You can get into the lobby, so have fun there. But I added a scene. It's the prop shop for all of my husband and I. We are a indie dev couple team, and we create primarily games, but other interactive experiences together. And these Stubborn Universe and Magical Capsule Critters are two experiences that we made. This app only has Magical Capsule Critters in it right now, and we haven't got it fully functional. We're porting it over from Spatial, and but we go under the name Mostly Harmless Adventurers. And so I made a prop shop, and I can actually go in there, but this is what's causing it to crash. And don't let me forget to go back to the Rainbow Beaver. But so the prop shop is this kind of like everything I do, kind of surreal museum out in space. And you can walk around and go to all these pedestals and see the 3D art that we've used in our projects. And when I had this project on Spatial, I had a URL click functionality so you could click on that object and it would take you to the Sketchfab page where you could actually download or purchase these assets. And some of them are from other 3D asset creators. That's kind of my thing. I built an app called Interconnect 3D. You're supposed to say it like interconnected. And it's an app to help 3D content creators like myself to extend the reach of their 3D asset sales. So like I was selling on Sketchfab. Now they got bought by Epic, and they got consolidated with ArtStation, and now they're in a platform called Fab. And you can so anyway, this is my app, Interconnect 3D. You can search for content, and when you find something that you like, you can click on the link and it will, whoops, that, because it's mine, I can edit it, so that didn't work. You can click on the link and it will take you to, darn it, there, where you can purchase that asset. Sorry for the little segue. So my thing is promoting 3D content creators and their art and helping them share. So I created this little prop shop, and that's why my app may or may not be currently working. You're seeing a work in progress. I'm gonna go back to the home scene and select the Magic Beaver, Rainbow Beaver. Magical Capsule Critters is a space where you're in the bottom of a massive blow up pool, as if you're like the scale of a little mouse or something. And you can grab these little capsules out of one of those blister packs and throw them into the water. And then eventually, once they're working again, they will grow from capsule to one of these foam critters. And this is one of the specials that you can get. But I wanted to talk about, let me go briefly show the slide again, because I wanted to talk about materials and just to get you a little bit oriented, if you're not familiar with Unity, we have, and your configuration will be different because I move my tabs all around and I open new tabs under this window. There's so many things here you can open up, but this is my typical workflow scene. So I have the hierarchy tab here on the left, and this is the contents for the specific scene that you're in. And that's what I'm looking at here. I have the scene view, which is the editor view that you can move things around in. And then there's the game view, which is as seen through the camera. And then when you're in the scene view, you can select on any of these, or not scene view. When you have the hierarchy tab open, you can select any of the objects, the 3D objects that are in your scene from the hierarchy tab. That's different from the actual object in your, oh, this guy's not connected, in your project. So it's important to distinguish the two, because a lot of, really skilled 3D artists, when they start getting into working with game engines, don't necessarily like understand the difference. So we have in this is the project tab in the lower left, but yours may where yours is located may vary. This learning the iconography in Unity is really helpful. This icon that kind of looks like an opened box is the source file of this mesh you're seeing in here. And it's all the inspector panel here is where you can modify the base mesh's properties, or if you are clicking in the hierarchy like I am here, you're actually modifying the properties of the actual object, the instance of that object that's in the scene. And so unless it's a prefab, which is this blue things indicated by a solid blue box, which is it's like the main version of an object that is any changes you make to it, you can make them be replicated to other objects of the same exact type, and you can break that reference so that you don't have to worry, so you can edit something in a scene and not worry about it having a ripple effect on other objects of the same type. But anyway, getting derailed. I wanted to show you that for either one of these, you can edit properties in the inspector. All of the base meshes properties are accessed through the project view. When you click on the object in the project, then you can see its import settings. And one of my slides, I'm not sure if I've gotten there yet, talks about considering adjusting your import settings. Mine's grayed out because I'm using source control, so I can just check it out, and then now I can edit it. But these settings do impact the size or performance of the object in your scene. Even though this is the source file, these are the import settings. If you we don't need to have visibility imported, we don't need to have cameras imported, we don't need to have lights imported. I've never gone through this asset and checked its import settings, but I do need blend shapes because this is an object, or copies of it use blend shapes to morph it from the capsule shape all the way out to the big critter shape. And so these are some settings that you'll want to investigate and drill down further. I'm not going to go one by one, but just if you make changes, make sure and click apply. And that will apply it to, this is the base mesh. So that will apply to this model anywhere in your scene. Now, if you edit, you can make a prefab from a scene simply by dragging it into a folder, and now it's a prefab. It's got the little green thing because I'm using source control, Unity version control, but it'll just have the solid blue. And now this is a prefab which has, like, if I place this prefab into other scenes and then go and edit the source prefab by double clicking it, it opens it into this there's a word for it. It says here, I don't know, open it in context, something like that. Anyway, if I make changes here and save them, they will be propagated to any other version that I have placed. I haven't yet. You just saw me make it now, so we know that there's no other versions of this mesh anywhere else in my project. But if I had it somewhere else and then I made a change, it would affect all the other meshes. There are two things that you can do. So now this particular version in here is a prefab. If you make changes to your prefab and you want them to get propagated to other objects of the same type in your other scenes or in, you know, elsewhere in your scene, you can go into this drop down that's at the top level prefab and choose and select the overrides, and there will be, you can no, let me change something. I'll just change the scale of it. Go back, and now there's, oh, I didn't overwrite. I guess I didn't save it. Anyway, if I had saved it, it would be here, and I could either apply overrides, which would mean like that would get propagated to every other mesh, or revert, and that would remove and delete and lose all of my changes, but it would also not get propagated to any of the other meshes. The other thing that I wanted to show you here was the material and how to access it. I have to check it out because I'm using version control. And something that some folks don't get right off the bat, I'm going to go back to my source file in the project, is that under the materials tab in the import settings, you may have an embedded material. And so that means if you have an embedded material, it will be, I'm opening this mesh up fully. There will be the material little sphere like we're seeing over here will be down here underneath here, and it will be locked for editing. So what you can do, and I'm not sure if I have an example, but is you can select that. So like I can select the rough mesh here, and this is how you would select the material if it was there. Right click it, and then there will be an extract from prefab option available if it's a material, and that will open up a browser. You can put your material somewhere, and then it will become editable. And sorry for the multiple derailments, but people often run into these issues where they can't, it's locked. I can't edit the material. But this is one of the places where I advise you to optimize. One, if you don't need all of these maps, for example, may not really see much of an effect from that occlusion map. Actually, in this case, I do, but in some cases you won't. Like, try it out, take it out, put it back if you realize you missed it, that it was having an important effect. But the other thing is that all these maps are textures in your project, and they each have an impact on your build size. And so this is a prime location where you can optimize. And so I probably better get back to my slides so that I don't miss. Let me like real quick, audio files. Another place where I highly recommend that you ask GPT, you know, how to optimize my audio files for this reason, for this use. Particles and other effects. Look for particle effects in scenes, especially if you're using like a third-party asset. A lot of these things will be kind of hidden and buried in there. Animations can be really big. I don't want to like derail you into a whole talk on animations, but you can edit animations in the Unity interface and see all the keyframes. And a lot of times when you're animating something in let's say Blender, you wind up adding keyframes unnecessarily. And let's see. I was going to see if I could do a little demonstration. but so your keyframing options are often, you can be keyframing multiple keying sets at once, so location, rotation, and scale, and even imported meshes like avatars that have a rig, like a skeleton that moves it around, and baked in animations like run or walk or idle. They will often have keyframes applied to parts of the animation that aren't even being affected. Like if you want to move the arm from here to here, it may have stored the position and rotation, location and rotation for the leg, and you didn't need that. So that's a wasted keyframe. That's, again, I don't want to get too far into that. Example and demo assets are big culprits. Almost every 3D asset pack that you get, or even SDKs, will come in with a bunch of example content. And it's really helpful when you're just getting started to like go into those scenes and learn what the tool or the asset does and what it can do. But leaving them in your project can wind up bloating your build and making it too big to run, and unnecessarily, because you're not using those things. So get rid of those. Bundled unused assets, unnecessary components. Components are basically the scripts that you find on, and well, everything in the inspector panel is a component. So every object in the scene has a transform component. That's this top level component, and all of these pieces that are collapsible separately are components. So everything in a scene has a transform component. That's just where it is in the world. The meshes often have a mesh filter and a mesh renderer. Sometimes your mesh renderer contains your materials. Sometimes your mesh renderer will have like animations in there for blend shapes. I added a box collider to this ground, and then a material. Those are not, but so you can also add components, and SDKs like Vertex Form 3D often have their own set of components that you can search and then add to your objects here that do various functionality. They also have their own custom editor windows that will pop up and show you other things you can do. But that's what they're doing, is adding components to objects they create functionality. So where was I? Build report, you saw that. So my advice is be proactive. Test new content in disposable projects. So if you're like, ooh, I found this cool asset pack that has, I'll just use my own personal experience, all these cool weather effects. Don't bring them into your production project, like the one that you want to ship, the one that you want to build and share with other people. I love to just duplicate, download the zip file from Vertex Form 3D. Let me go there. You go to their website, you go to their GitHub, you download the package as a zip file, and then it takes a lot of time, so prepare to have a snack, do something else while this stuff is slowly unveiling. You'll download the zip file. You may want to rename it at that point. After it downloads, it takes a little while to download because it's a lot of functionality all bundled into one. And Vertex Form 3D is essentially a template with all of this additional functionality. So you've got a full Unity project when you open it. And I rename it, and then I move it into where I store all of my Unity projects. And then from inside my Unity hub, I click to add from disk, and then that will bring up my file browser, and then you locate that newly named project, open it from there. Do that duplicate that like 10 times. I mean, it will take up a lot of space on your hard drive, and then go and delete them later. But use those duplicate projects, throwaway projects, to test things out. Don't put test stuff into the project that you want to ship. Learn what gets included in a build. That's the whole build a report. That's where learning how to navigate that comes in easy. And again, ask an LLM, ask AI to help you understand what's in your build report. You can even, well, that's a large file, so you probably don't want to paste it in, but you could paste in like sections of it. You can copy and paste in sections of it and say, what is this? When you add packages, be choosy. I am a big promoter of using paid and 3D assets, but and the way, I don't know if you've been to the asset store, but it's the Unity asset store is incredible. Fab is incredible. Sketchfab is incredible. Use third-party assets, but when you do, be picky about what you bring into your builds. And so I was just walking through the steps here of how you access the package manager, and these are all assets. I have a problem. I have 458 different packages that I've purchased, but if you go to import one of these into your project, you gotta find one that's like that's already been downloaded. You click import into project, and I'm not going to do it now because that will hog up resources, but it will open up a import panel, and there are checkboxes next to every single thing in that package. And there's a reason. It's because you don't need all of that stuff. Every time I open an import window, I deselect all, and then I go through and I collapse massive folders so that I can just get a better idea of an overview of what I'm importing. And I only select things that I'm sure I need, or like I don't know what that is, so I probably better grab it. But don't bring in things that are like, I might want that tree stump, but I'm not actually sure, because that doesn't fit with your main goal that you've already established of what you want. So be choosy. The list has checkboxes for a reason. My other advice is, don't be afraid to break things. If something, it came from a package, or if you have that asset somewhere else on your hard drive, it's a 3D model you custom created or something, it can be restored. So don't worry about breaking it. Like, open it up, remove things that you don't need. Okay, sorry, I think that was clear. Use the remove in package manager. I don't know when this got installed, but it's super freaking nice. Do I have Sky? Oh, you have so many Sky things. They added in here a Skybox. Okay, Skybox Plus is in this. Come on. Okay. No, it's not. I thought it was. Well, under these drop downs are, or under this button, right now it says download because I haven't downloaded it. It would say install if I had it downloaded to my local drive. And if it was installed, if it was in the project, oh, I can go to in project, right? Yeah. Oh, these are not just vanity stuff. Anyway, you can remove the assets from project. Use this button. It's a really nice, handy thing. I don't know when they added it, but it didn't used to be there, and it was really sucky for developers, because then if imported stuff and it would go everywhere in all folders and you don't know where. And so you've got like 8K textures hidden away in a resources folder that's getting bundled into your build and bloating your file size, and you just don't know. But if you use remove, it will find all those files and suck them out. Anyway, and consider editing your import settings. This goes back to what I showed you in the inspector, in the models tab, for meshes specifically, but there are other import settings for audio and other file types that you should consider learning what they do and researching the optimal settings and then applying them. So now my slides get into more specifics. For models in scenes, check for unneeded components in the inspector. You know how I showed you all those. Sometimes, especially if you're moving a project from one platform to another, which is a lot of us coming to Vertex Form 3D. We may have, had stuff we built in VR Chat or Altspace or anything. So look at the objects in your scene, look at their inspector panel and see if any of the components are things you don't actually need and remove them. Also check your prefabs contents in the hierarchy. I showed you how to open the prefabs view. Sometimes, especially with like effects, particle effects will often, particle effect asset publishers will often have effects like child objects in their effects that aren't used. And I don't know, I don't know how much things that are disabled actually contribute, but if you don't need it, get rid of it. If they're disabled and they're not being activated by a script or something, then just get rid of them. And again, don't be afraid to break things. And optimize your materials if possible. So extract the models from the source file in the project to edit them. That's what I showed you there. To optimize the materials, remove textures that you don't need, get them completely out of the project so that they're not getting used. Like you may not visibly notice their effect, and also crunch the textures. I would get to that. I have a slide here that I don't think I'll have time to like go over. Hey, Evie, how am I doing on time, by the way? Am I like at the end of my...
I guess you're fine. I'm enjoying it. I mean, I
Okay.
guess,
As
yeah.
long as people are still hanging in there.
Yeah, they are.
I have a few more slides to go.
Yeah.
I'll try to be a little quicker. But so I provided two columns, one for if you're modeling custom meshes, you have the opportunity to be more thoughtful about how you're designing your work. And my big advice is only subdivide with a reason. By subdividing, I mean adding edge loops, using a subsurface mesh modifier. The problem with like it can make a mesh really beautiful and have smooth surfaces and stuff, but it's at a cost where you're going to be adding grid lines, edges where they're not contributing at all to the look of the mesh, and you don't want to do that. So doing targeted subdivisions, only adding an edge loop where it will make a visible difference on the silhouette of the object is really important. Don't add unseen details, like don't put the bottom of a cup that's never going to be lifted. Well, you made cups. Don't put the bottom of a sofa. Nobody's ever going to see that unless your game is about, or your experience is about like throwing sofas. Always do a cleanup pass before you export your files. Consolidate your materials into one. And this is a big topic, and I would love to maybe come back for like a hands-on exercise and demo. If somebody wants to bring an unoptimized object and have us go through how to optimize it, consolidating your materials into one is huge. And this is something that avatars often come with like 5 different materials. And then when you try to upload them to a platform like VR Chat, you'll get a warning that, sorry, it has too many materials. And then you're like, I don't know what to do. You can literally make a duplicate of that object in Blender and then remove all the materials from the duplicate object, give it its own new single material, and then repack the UVs so that they're all, because all of those UVs will be in different locations for the different materials, repack them all into the 1-1 space, and then you can bake all of those materials from the from the high material count object to the low material count new version. Delete unused keyframes. That's like if you're animating your own stuff. Use a mesh instead of transparent. We talked about that with leaves. Separate parts with transparency. That allows, meaning if you have a mesh that has a part that's transparent, make that its own object in the Blender hierarchy. Let's see if I can tab into edit mode, add a cube. So in edit mode, these are one object. You can see in the outliner that this is just Suzanne, even though it's got two objects, but you can separate by loose parts. And now, oh, I guess Suzanne came with her own additional parts. She's got eyeballs and stuff. But so these are all separate. So if one of these had transparency, needed transparency, it would be better that this one has its own, oh my, just clicking just made it slow down. Add a new material to that, even if it's using the same textures, have that material be the one that has transparency, and then put an opaque material on a duplicate material of it that is only opaque, that in Unity you make it opaque by having a second version of that same material. And sorry about that, Blender's not enjoying this process. So yeah, having the transparency material not be applied to everything that's opaque can cut down on that transparency layering issue that I described earlier. And if you are just using Blender to, I highly recommend that you edit pre-made assets too. So if you went and you bought a cool mesh off of the asset store, go navigate to your file, through your file explorer to that FBX, import it in, or whatever file format it is, import it into Blender and edit it if you can, if you have the skills, if you understand. So the edits I recommend are unsubdividing meshes. There are so many assets that have just a ton of unneeded edge loops. And if you just right click on an object, and I can't open Blender again, it's like not that. But if you right click, you're in edit mode, and you select an edge loop, like alt and clicking onto it, and then hit delete or X. Menu option is dissolve edge loops, and that's that will just cleanly remove the whole loop, the whole contiguous edge to edge loop. And you'll be surprised how many edge loops that are in other people's models that they don't need to be there. And then merge vertices where you can, delete hidden faces. Like I said, you don't need the underneath of a sofa. Duplicate, if you're like scared about, oh, what if I break this? Duplicate your mesh and then do stuff to it. And one of the things that I recommend is doing a decimate process, which is just adding a decimate modifier and then cranking it way down and then adjusting it until it's like, you still have the visible silhouette of the object, and then apply that decimation. And now you would then use that whole consolidating materials process where you bake the materials from the high higher resolution onto the decimated meshes, and then you export that decimated mesh as your new mesh. This is really helpful. Like, this may be too nitpicky if you've got a scene with hundreds of objects, but if you've got a hero object that's like this giant sculpture and it's super freaking cool and it's a feature, doing some of these steps is really worthwhile. It's going to make a huge difference. Bake high detail onto normal maps. That's another thing I would be happy to walk people through, but there's also tutorials, and LLMs can help you learn how to do that too. And monitor your poly count in, let's see if Blender is back to, in Blender, under the overlays tab, there is a little button called statistics, and you can turn that on and it will show you the objects, vertices, edges, faces, triangles of the left side is the selection. You see it's changing as I go through here, and then the whole, all of the triangles in the scene. Yeah, that was that. Sorry. So monitor your poly count as you're working. Like, try to be aware of what you're doing. And that applies for both custom and editing models. Oh boy, textures. Always optimize your textures in Unity. And what I mean by that is, like, don't worry too much about, like, export your biggest, most beautiful file. That is okay. What Unity does is it goes in and crunches those images down for the build, and the way that you set that, the way you optimize them in Unity is through the inspector panel. The import settings for each texture are important. If your texture, sorry, and or material doesn't have transparency, you don't need to have the alpha source. Oftentimes you don't need a map if you're in, especially a lot of VR experiences, like if you're in a room and you're not going to get very far from this object ever, you definitely don't need a map. Maps are like additional versions of the texture that are like lower res, like the further, and they get automatically applied the further away you get from the object that has that texture on it. And it's really like a distance, an LOD kind of thing, optimization, but it also has the equal effect that it's creating more textures for your build. So like, you got to balance it. Like, if it's something that's going to be seen very far away, definitely generate bitmaps. But it's on by default, so you can disable that for some things. And then for most things, for textures in 3D, like that are in materials on an object versus being in the UI, I definitely use crunch compression. High quality is fine. I usually cap my max texture size at 1024. I think Abby says she uses 512 a lot, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. I should really do that, but
I go as low as I can. When I see it starts to blur, then I go a little higher.
yes,
Usually,
test it out, because it's really, as an artist, you're so scared of losing that detail, right? And so, like, but don't be afraid. Just go as low as you want to go, or not as well. Go lower than you want to go. That was part of my slide, was like crunch them more than you want to. 1024 looks better than you think. Take it for I 512 often does just fine too. Use JPEGs. For non-transparent JPEGs get a bad rap, but they're really a good compression. So if you don't need transparency in your image, then use a JPEG if you can. In Substance Painter, which is a paid app, so I don't love to promote it, it's an Adobe product. They do have export options where you can create a template for your exports, and I have one that's set up to export JPEGs for those don't need channels and opacity, transparency. Yours, this is to encourage you, your source files will not be affected just because they are crunched in Unity in the import settings. Your source files are fine. Find textures in projects by folder, understand how to select multiple, they have to be of the same type. Just real quick, what I meant was use your project search tab, navigate to the top level of the folder that you actually want to search through. It will by default do a search of all your assets, but then you will get an option to select specific ones. In this search by type, there's a convenient little drop down, and you can search by type texture. You can also do materials and shaders and other things. So if you want to go on an optimizing spree, that's how you get everything at once. Now see how it by default it goes in assets, but because I had my folder selected, I will have this drop down option to go to filter it down just to my assets. And this is helpful because there's always going to be textures in there that you didn't put there that you don't necessarily won't necessarily get put in the build, so you don't need to worry about them, or you just need to handle them separately. But so I'm gonna discard that change because I was in the middle of editing that. You can like do group selections and then do group operations on them, and this is what I like to do. I would have to check these all out to do this, but only the parameters that these have in common will show up in the right hand side. So you need to select textures of the same type. Like if I have a skybox in here, it's going to have completely different settings. If I have a sprite in here, it's going to have different settings. See how like on the right hand side it's collapsing because like here's all the options, and then I select something else, and then boop, these are only the things that these have in common. So easier to there I've got the skybox in there. So just skip those, and you can control to add to your selection and then go back to shift to select more, or command if you're on a Mac. And then you can change all these settings at once. It's grayed out because they're not checked out. I don't want to check them out. But you can then adjust the max size all at once. Use crunch compression. It's not bad. You can put the compression at high quality and the compressor quality at 100 or whatever. Like let the best practices that you can find on the web or with LLMs guide you there. I don't want to give specific because the next step is learn what the settings are for, and the different settings for different texture types. This is something I could give a whole talk about, just textures and texture optimization. Don't leave one color texture maps like metallic full size. Sometimes you'll see like you'll have like a 2048 metallic map that is pure black. That's what I mean by one color. No need for that. You could either just completely remove it and use the slider at max or min, or you in the material slider for the metallic map, or have a little 32 by 32 image if you really need that image in there for some reason, and share it between multiple materials. So share single color maps between materials, because like, yeah, they don't have specific detail to that object. Audio, shaders, and animations I group together because I have less specific directions about them. Like textures, always optimize your audio in Unity. And there are specific settings for each. And I have asked Claude to help me with this, and it's really useful because you can have it tell you like this is a one-shot audio that's only going to play halfway through the experience. Once the player has gone through the load-in and login and they've reached a destination and they click a button, that's when it's going to play. There's a different optimization setting for that type of audio than for your loading music or your ambient. So you want to choose the right settings for each audio clip. And another advice that's might need a little more explanation: use the simplest shader needed in Unity in the shader. Okay, shaders are the math that tells the material. This little sphere is the material. This drop down here is where you select a shader. Oops, sorry. This is the code that tells the material how to render these textures, or the settings that the parameters that you have set in there, because some shaders do non-texture effects, and that's really cool. In Unity 6, you'll want to be using the universal render pipeline shaders primarily. The lit shader is what I'm using here. It has a lot of slots. Like, I've got some unused slots. I could possibly use a different shader that would be more optimal. Another good option, oftentimes, especially for VR, is to use mobile shaders. And that's a whole nother section up here. Basically, and I'm like, do as I say, not as I do, because I really don't need this this level of complexity in my shader. I don't have detail inputs. I don't have emission on here. There are shaders that will only be a base map and a normal map. That's the bumped diffuse option. And that is often perfectly good for all purposes. So use those kinds of shortcuts or optimization techniques when you can. And then reduce the keyframes in animations. I've already gone over that too much. So when you're troubleshooting, like after you've built stuff and you've added stuff to your project, go back to that list and look for the most common culprits. Try to hit a minimum frame rate for VR, enable it and check it. I was going to show you in Unity where that is. It is in the game view and under stats. So you just click this stats button. It might be, if you've got Windows collapsed, it might be hiding. They finally made it so you could slide that around. No, never mind, forget it. I think it must be Unity 6.1. You can now slide over to the right and get that stuff that gets hidden. So enable stats. When you press play, these numbers will start ticking. You're aiming for 90, this FPS value right here. You're aiming for 90 and above for VR. Otherwise, you risk making people sick. View your scenes in wireframe. That's another way of seeing so here's wireframe view, wireframe draw mode. This is just in the scene view. This gives you an idea of the mesh resolution. Why is it just showing me? Oh, sorry. No, that was weird because it was only showing me the debug log. So yeah, this guy has a lot more polygons. This one breaks the rule of not having edge loops where you don't need them because he morphs into a capsule. But so why can't I just see wireframe and lights? If anybody knows, this seems to be something with Unity 6 that I just haven't found where that setting is. So my apologies for being slightly unprepared, but you can see the wireframe in some view up here, figure it out, and that'll give you a good idea of where you've got some high resolution meshes that you can bring into Blender and reduce, or maybe replace it with something else if you don't know how to 3D model and
Drop down.
edit.
If you go in the drop down menu, I think it should be there.
Oops.
It's where gizmos are, like all the way to the right, I think. More.
Oh,
That little circle, that little globe.
yeah.
And then click on the drop down.
Oop.
Yeah, it should be somewhere here, no? Selection wire, no? Maybe that one. And then if you,
That's probably it.
maybe.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I turn off selection wire because it's kind of annoying, but yeah, now you're just seeing the whole view with only the resolution. So you can see this mesh is pretty optimized, doesn't have a lot of excess crisscrossing meshes, but this one is not optimized. It has a lot of crisscrossing edges that aren't needed. Thank you, Effie. Okay, again, cut anything that is competing with your goal, whether your goal is for like super fast fun or just dazzling beauty, like anything that is not that, just remove it. Like keep your scenes and your projects trim to really maximize your goal. That's the whole budgeting thing. Another thing you can do is replace entire systems if needed. This I think it should be in strategy. I don't know, I formatted the title or the slide weird. But so like you try using a static skybox instead of something that has a day and night cycle, or use a simple water shader versus an entire ocean system. Ocean systems like have infinite water and they're a bit more expensive. Consider making your effects local versus global. So like volumetric clouds, or I mean, you're not going to be using those in VR. I'm trying, but I haven't gotten them to work yet. And use a big one that a lot of people don't seem to think of is using mesh for the floor or ground instead of terrain. Terrain in Unity is this whole sculptable, it has so many features where you can draw foliage and multiple layers of textures that you can then mask with a brush, and it just has so much functionality that is not needed for most just solid floor. Like go and build a cool terrain in Blender and map it with a single material and put that in your scene. It's oftentimes far better than using a real terrain, a Unity terrain, because they're just way more powerful than many applications need. I listed some advanced topics to research because I don't feel like we're going to have enough time. Now we're going on, yeah, we're going to be an hour and a half now. So look into batching, again, ask LLMs about these topics, and do, I like using DuckDuckGo. It's a more private search engine for the web. Addressables, one of the wonderful things about Vertex Form 3D is that it makes using addressables easy. They have an addressables build. Their tutorials walk you through adding your scenes into an addressables list, and then just a one-click button, and it all runs. But it's something that's like hard to get into if you're starting from scratch without that framework in place. Light map baking. This is something that a lot of 3D artists will go on the web looking for how to optimize their scenes, and that's the first thing anybody talks about. But I want to encourage you to learn when it helps and when it doesn't, because what it's doing is it creates a second level, a second set of UV maps on your meshes, on every single mesh that is marked static, which is how you get it to be baked, included in the bake. and it adds another texture to it. And it's a lower resolution texture, but that texture is to store the lighting data. So it definitely is a good technique to offset, rather than having a bunch of real-time lights, because real-time lights are a huge, I think I listed that in the common culprits, or the lights and their settings. Yeah, light settings and the number and type of lights. Can't use area lights in VR, I believe. But so light map baking can definitely be a good alternative to having too many lights, because lights are extremely processing intensive. That's probably why my prop scene doesn't run real great, because it's got like 50 lights, point lights specifically, and I am baking them, but then I have like 50 128 by 128 texture, light map textures in my scene, and I have to figure out which one's better. So the second to last thing here helps with that. Use the profiler. There is and that's a whole other thing that you could do. Like, you can find a video on using the profiler, do that. I don't very often, because I've like got so many other specialties and things pulling at my attention. But using the profiler, it's this window in Unity that pops up, or that you can open up, that shows like this running ticker of everything. So if you've got an animation, it'll show you when there's lag spikes from animation. It'll identify what it's from, or if this shader is suddenly appearing and then disappearing, like from a particle effect or something, it'll show you that and help you find that, and then that's more targeted. Using LODs and imposter meshes is a good mesh optimization to look into, but it's also a very complex subject. Another thing I would love to do a whole talk on. And the huge one, code optimization. Like, I can't even touch on that. If you have code in your application that is unoptimized, it's going to have a huge impact on your app's speed. And so be careful importing third-party code. Tools are really nice and handy, and they can make your workflow so much easier, but you're also really dependent on that person, the publisher, having done their due diligence and optimizing it as much as possible. And it's a balance. And it's often I'm out of my depth figuring out whether code is optimal or not. And then your render pipeline features and quality settings are the last thing I will show you where to find them under edit, project settings. There are all these tabs on the left-hand side. Graphics is one of them. Another nice thing about Vertex Form 3D is that they've already set up the quality settings and your render pipeline, and so you don't necessarily have to go in and tinker with those. But this is an area where, if you're really like, this is me, I'm always wanting to push the bounds and put more cooler, more fun stuff in there. So I'm always having to look at where to cut corners, and this is where you can find some more places where you can either go down to a lower quality render pipeline asset. These are just scriptable objects in your project that often come preloaded, but learn where to set them, because there's multiple places where this is using high quality, that one's using medium. Do as I say, not as I do. I don't know what I did there. I don't know why they're different. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, this is awesome. I learned a lot, honestly. I think one thing I would add, and I noticed that affects hugely a lot of VR applications, is that when people build something, or they take an asset and then they bring it in Unity and then they scale it up. right?
Okay.
So the scale is actually has to be 111 in your inspector. So
That's right.
normally don't blow up your assets if they were small, because Unity is going to start working, um, shrink it, make sure that a scale is applied in Blender, then already bring it to Unity. So, well, you got 71, so that one is a little bigger scale there.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, and that's another thing. If you go to, and I'm tapping here to get to the base asset, or the root, the not root asset, the source asset in here in the model. There's a scale factor, and in the import settings that you want to pay attention to. This should be 1 to 1, 1 meter in and 1 meter in your file is equal to 1 meter in Unity. That's huge. And in Blender, this is something I'd also like to do is give some suggested export settings, but using the correct export settings is important. I don't know what I have all here, but so let's just pretend. Um, So this is the Unity FBX export settings. There's different export settings per file type. Man, this is really not helpful because nobody's gonna see this in their view.
Oh,
File export FBX. It's probably not going to reset my. Okay, it did. Okay, good. So this is the section that you're gonna want to pay attention to right here. And you want to limit to selected objects. Typically, if you're importing or you're exporting just a static mesh, not an animated, you just want mesh selected. If it's a avatar, a rigged mesh with bones, you want to also what is it, shift and click for armature. But if you, this is another thing where if you don't need it, don't include it. So include mesh. And then for Unity scale, you always want to choose FBX units scale. By default, Blender exports all local scalings, but you want FBX units scale. And I don't worry too much about the orientation. You can disable animation if there's animations on your object, but you don't need them, do that. If you are exporting animations, deselect all actions. You'll export NLA strips. The armature, you probably don't need to add leaf bones.
I would apply transform too.
Apply transforms
Up, just high.
in
It's right
where?
where a unit. Yeah, that one.
Oh, here, yeah. For armatures, definitely. It's a you get a little warning that it's an experimental feature or something.
Works usually if you
But
forget to apply it through your modifiers, or if I don't want to apply modifiers, so on export it will apply to the FBX model, but they will keep my modifiers untouched in Blender.
and that's important with rigged with armatures and rigged like avatars animations that are have a bone animation, because the modifiers are how the armature.
I think we can do
It's a modifier. Armatures are a modifier, so you don't want to apply the modifiers, but yeah. So oh, another thing is if you want to include your textures in an export, you need to click this path mode dropdown, click copy, and then enable this little box. And this embeds the textures into the FBX. Now that will make the file size bigger. And so you need to balance that. But this is a lot of people have questions like, I exported my mesh from Blender into Unity and my textures are all gone. Well, this is how you make sure they're packed in. So again, it's under copy, and then you make this blue. Blue is active. So anyway, is there any questions before I wrap up?
I think on Blender, somebody requested that we do a workflow. I think that's a good topic for us to do.
I would
There's
love to do that.
left and right hand that people have to understand. Yeah.
I'm scared I put everybody to sleep.
No, no, no. We're putting it in a lot of password and we're gonna share. Can you please have more presentations? We will try to set up more. Yeah, useful like this.
Oh, so many comments. Oh, thank you, everybody.
This was one of the best Unity sessions I ever had.
Oh,
Oh, thank you.
follow on LinkedIn. Yes. Give us a star on GitHub. Yes.
That copy function does not work for me. It should work for you if you we can show that, right? Like maybe we can try do a session, actual session, how to do that, because you have to extract them. You not only do that, you have to bring them to Unity and then extract materials. There's a different
Yeah, that
yes,
was one of the things I was I don't know where I have one that might have the materials already
not extract.
packed in to show you how to extract
Once
them.
you bring it, it's going to be just the model. Once you unpack it, it will create two folders. One will be with textures, one will be with materials. So you'll have three things.
Yeah. And so in here, here's
Model,
a
click on model, little tab. Yeah, no, 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 down, down, down. Right, this one. Oh, it's not here.
no,
Okay.
I think you're
Oh,
thinking of materials.
embedded. Can you click on use embedded? Location. And then, or you can use external and then it will unpack it, right? I think.
Yeah, the problem is that I've already extracted all my materials, so I don't have any in my project. But if you bring it in, any brand new asset will have its materials embedded in it, and then the textures will be embedded in the material, and then that's when these options open up to extract the textures and extract the materials. But you can also right click them from if you open this drop down on a model, this material thing will be up underneath it as a child of it, and that will be selectable and extract from prefab is will be active and available for you to do. And that's a similar, it's same thing, different location in the interface. It's yeah, using the embedded materials or extracting them. Extracting them makes them editable. Sorry. Let me going through.
I love it. I love it.
Jay
Yeah.
said they found a lot of found large models imported, caused a lot of crashing. Yeah, look at your file size of your models too. That'll be in the build report. But the thing is build reports are only available after you've done a build. So that was one of my recommendations, was to run a test build. But yeah, that's kind of late in the game. You can also look at the file sizes in you can literally in the Unity project, right click, show in Explorer, and it will find that file, and then you can look at the file size on in your local project hierarchy. So you see all of my file sizes here. So thanks, Jay. That's a good thing to pay attention to. Context view also.
Fantastic, Laurie. I'm gonna need optimization like hell. Yeah, your world is massive. He's brilliant.
Sorry.
Use the help.
I'll get it back into compliance. I will get it back under the limit. I'm just like, I'm so reckless, and isn't it funny that like optimization is my thing, but I'm like, I'm gonna break this.
You like a doctor. It's like, well, you gotta do a diet, and they're like, oh, let me just.
Yes, I'm gonna have all that cake.
You want to do it fast. You're like, oh, I just want this result faster, and then you kind of cut corners a lot, but you should, yeah. That was awesome. I think we're gonna probably wrap it here so we don't overgo. We actually, it's fine. It was very useful. Um,
Yes, thank you.
and will you be able to share those like slides of the in Google Slides?
Yes, is that the most convenient way, or do
I will,
people
if
want
they are
PDF?
shareable like a Google Drive or something, or if it's PDF, I can drop it in the GitHub, or I'm sorry, in Discord plus LinkedIn, and put it in the
Yes.
description of the YouTube.
Yes, please join Evie's Vertex Form 3D uh Discord. I'm in there. I'm happy to answer questions. Mostly about Unity and Blender, but I'm learning a lot about Vertex Form 3D, so I'm getting some.
Helping a lot with SDK development. So
Yeah, let me share the link. Anyone who has access has a link. Okay. Anyone with the link, copy link. Okay, just for everybody attending, I'm pasting in the link to the presentation in the chat,
I see it.
and then I will I see a bunch of anonymous critters loading in. Yay, thanks everybody. Oh, that makes me so happy that it's being helpful. Yay, you're welcome. Thank you.